Hi, everyone. We're going to start just a little bit early today. I was informed that on one of our websites, it looks like we said that we were starting at 2:15 today. So some of you might have been waiting around for a little bit. Sorry about that if you read 2:15 on some of our sites. We were planning to start at 2:30 as normal today. So we're going to take a couple minutes before we really jump into it because we don't want to leave anybody behind if they are getting here at 2:30 as normal. We may have a few people pop in and say, whoa, what are we doing? I just got here. So bear with us if we repeat ourselves a few times. As always, if you'd like to ask a question or say anything, make sure that you type it in the Q&A box. The raise hand feature doesn't really do anything. I do see it occasionally when it pops up, but asking questions in the question and answer box is really the only way that I can actually get your questions or any examples that you write. So feel free to use that one. No worries, Mackenzie, you're not late. We actually started a little bit early, so don't worry. Hi to everyone saying hello in the Q&A box. Welcome back. I see a lot of return writers here. We have like our little writers club here. It's people that have been showing up to all the webinars. Love seeing you guys back. You guys are great. Lorna asks, are we going to write examples in the Q&A box today? Yes. I love reading. I love giving you guys examples of, we talk about something and then I ask you to write some examples in the Q&A box and you guys do that and you've been doing great. So we're going to keep on doing that. Yes, I am Corey. Somebody asked if I'm Corey. That's me. And I'll be teaching the webinar today. So hello to everybody. Yeah. Oh, somebody's asking about a movie example that I used in an earlier writing seminar. I can't spoil it. I can't tell you the ending of that movie. You may have guessed it correctly though. So yes, Austin, if you know what movie I was talking about and you want to type it in the Q&A box, I will give you a thumbs up if you guessed it correctly. Hi, Amelia. Amelia's here. She says she's actually been here for our summer camp before. Yeah, I remember you. Hi. Good to see you here in the webinar. I'm happy that you are taking our online classes here. Shanna asks, do we know that in the email it said this started at 2:15? Yes, I just found out about that. So sorry about that. On the website, I think it still said 2:30, and in email it said 2:15, but that was a mistake. We are starting right now at 2:30. So Isis or anybody else that just came in, you have missed nothing. We've just been talking about the fact that there was a little bit of confusion on what the start time was supposed to be, but we're starting now and you have missed nothing. I just began the class a little bit early so that nobody would be sitting around. So, no, one attendee asked if I can see the people at home. No, I can only see your questions in the Q&A box. For a webinar, it's like a one-way direction. You guys can see me through the recording. I cannot see any of you at home. So the only way that I can get any communication from you is if you type it in the Q&A box. So go ahead and do that if you have a question or if you want to share an example. All right. So I think it's now 2:32. We should have most of the people here. So let's go ahead and get started. Let's see. Oh, we have a big class today. We have over 40 people. This is awesome. Welcome, everybody. In the attendees area, I see Nathan, AG, Alan, Amelia, Andrew, April, Asmi, Aubrey, Austin, Brando, Cosimo, Cyrus, Eliana, Ethan, Evelyn, Fallon. I see Gabriel, Gayathri, Isha, Isis, Joie, I think that's pronounced, Lexi, Liza, Logan, Lorna, Luke, Mackenzie. I see Madeline, Martin, Maya, Milo, Nate, Nathan, Nathaniel, Olivia, Ron Beer, Sasha, and Shanna. Hi, everyone. And hello to anybody else that may show up in the next few minutes here. Okay, so today, continuing our series of webinars on creative writing, today we're going to talk about dialogue. So dialogue is another very important part of writing, And we're going to start by talking about what does that word even mean? If you ever read about the important parts of creative writing, you may have heard the word dialogue before. Remember, I always like to say it, these are suggestions, not rules. So if I give you any suggestions today and you're like, I don't want to use that in my writing, well, that's okay. You can use it or not. You can try it out or decide that it doesn't work for you, and that's totally okay. But here we are. What does dialogue mean? Very important. Dialogue comes from two old Greek words. Dia meant between things or people. So you have two or more people or things, and something going in between those would be dia. Log comes from a word that means talking. So dialogue meant people talking to each other, or talking that goes between two things. So we've talked about a lot of different parts of creative writing already. Characters, we've talked about what makes characters interesting, like what makes an interesting plot. But another important part of writing a story is dialogue, when characters talk to each other. We want to make our characters sound like real people. Some people don't really like writing dialogue. They feel like it sounds kind of weird or unnatural. Some people will leave it out like a lot, almost completely. Sometimes they'll write a story and it's just describing things happening, but the people in the story don't really say very much. Well, we're going to talk today about some ways to fix that. So, how do we make our characters sound like real people when they talk? First, in real life, talking is messy. Your writing shouldn't be. Your readers won't notice if you leave out all the uhs. They will notice if you try to put them in. So let's talk about this for a second. In real life, when we talk to each other, if you ever sit back and just listen to a few people talk, you'll notice that they do a lot of pauses. They say a lot. They will repeat themselves. They'll start saying one thing, they'll stop and talk about something else, and then maybe circle back and talk about the first thing again. And we generally understand that when we're talking to somebody else. But if you actually wrote that down, it would be a little bit confusing and it wouldn't sound very good. When we read stories or novels, you'll notice that most writers leave all of that out completely. Open up the nearest book to you that's a novel or that has like a fictional story in it, and turn to the any part where characters are talking to each other, and you'll notice that they don't really usually have a lot of that pausing and stumbling and making mistakes that we do in real life. Now, sometimes maybe if we include a little bit of that, it could make the writing sound more realistic, and it could make the people talking to each other sound more realistic. But in general, it's just kind of annoying to the reader. So that's our first rule for good dialogue, is you can just leave all of that out. Try to have the characters talk in direct sentences, usually without any mistakes. While we're trying to make our characters sound like real people, we don't want to make the mistake of putting a lot of that extra kind of filler words and mistakes in there. It really doesn't serve the purpose of communication. Because as always, that's what good writing is all about, is communicating. We want to communicate to our reader, and we don't really want to distract them or annoy them with writing that's kind of jumbled and full of mistakes and little bits of weird stumbling and whatnot. Okay? So I thought it would be fun today for some examples. I pulled some pictures from one of my favorite movie series, the Star Wars series, and I have a few dialogue examples from that. This is a picture of Darth Vader. I assume that most of you are familiar with Darth Vader, and this is one bit of dialogue from one of the movies that he's in. He says, "You have only begun to discover your power. Join me, and I will complete your training. With our combined strength, we can end this destructive conflict and bring order to the galaxy." Can you imagine if Darth Vader in the middle of that sentence was like, "Join me, and I will complete your training." With our combined, I I talked about training, right? Oh, yeah, I did. Okay. With our combined strength, we can end this destructive fight. No, I mean, it's more like a conflict. And anyway, I'm just going to stop there. It's awful, right? There aren't very many characters where putting all those extra words in there improves it. I think the one exception is if you have a character who is very like weak and very unsure of themselves, you could have them stumble and repeat and say and like a lot, but don't overdo it. You probably only want maybe like one character to do that and not too much, because as a reader, it's annoying. It slows you down, and we generally don't like characters and stories that do that. So try to keep it to a minimum. Okay, for our first writing exercise today, I want you to make up some dialogue in the Q&A box. Just have one or two, like two characters talking to each other, and try to have them write in direct sentences, questions, etc. Make sure that you can keep it simple, but try to leave out any of those pauses or extra words in there. And as soon as I see some examples pop up, I'll read those out loud. We do have a lot of people in the webinar today, so I don't think I'll be able to read every single person's example. I will read them all though, so thank you for sending your examples in. I'll probably just have to pick some out though and read those. So yeah. All right. One person is guessing what the movie example was in our earlier webinar. Austin, that's a good guess. That wasn't the one I was thinking of, but I think that you came up with a great example. No spoilers here. Shanna, I'm glad that you're enjoying the webinar. Thank you. All right. While we wait for some of those examples to come in, Shanna says that she was told that you have to put a new paragraph for every new person talking. Yeah, we're not really going to get too much into the kind of structure of what it looks like on the page. We could maybe do that in another webinar. But yes, usually every time a new character talks, you do start a new paragraph. You'd hit enter, start a new line, and that shows the reader that a new person is talking. So that's right. Yeah, one person, Madeline brings up that J.K. Rowling uses like in the middle of a sentence. Yeah, but I think you'd agree she doesn't overdo it. Too much of that would probably be annoying, but characters do occasionally say that in the middle of a sentence to show that they're unsure of something. So that's a good example. Thanks for bringing that up. All right. All right, Lexi has an example here. She has, hi, John. Hey, Bob. What are you doing today, John? Just working from home. Good example. Let's see. All right, here's an example from Alan. Joe, hey, what you doing? Bob, I'm cutting wood. Joe, good, we need wood for our fire. Bob, great, I'll keep cutting. How much more? Joe, 1 or 2 more logs, please. Good job. Good, simple dialogue there. Well done. All right, let's see what else we have. All right, this is from AG. Get out of bed, my mom yelled at me. Huh? I said groggily. It's not like I have anything to do today, just math. Great example. Good job. All right. All right, good. Those are the examples I see so far. If anybody else would like to put an example of dialogue in there, go ahead. Yeah, so earlier, Gabriel has a short one here. Elijah, hi. Luke, what's up? Yeah, that's a good short one. All right, Elaine says, "Hey, friend. Hi. Is something wrong?" "Yes." "What is wrong?" "I got sick." Good. Here's one from Remy. Customer, can I have a soda, please? Employee, sure. Would you like a side with that? Good. Good job, guys. All right, here's an example from Brando. So the first person says, "You promised." Another person says, "I said you could if you finished before breakfast." Another person says, "Well, I would have if you would have untied me." I'm not sure what's going on there, but that's a good example. Sounds like somebody got captured there. All right, very good job, everybody. Okay, good. So let's move on to our next part of dialogue. See you later, Darth. All right. Every time someone talks, it should change things or push the story forward. What the character says can tell you more about them, or it can tell you more about what is happening in the story. So let's talk about this one for a second. Beginning writers and even more advanced writers can kind of fall into a bit of a trap where when you're writing a story, it feels like it's time to have the characters talk, but you don't really know what you want the characters to talk about. So you have them say some stuff to each other, but it doesn't really matter. The talking that you have the characters do, can be a little bit boring if it's not really important to the story. In real life, we do a lot of talking throughout our day. We talk to our family, we talk to our friends, we talk to, if we're at the store or a restaurant, we would talk to the people there. But if our life was a story and you wanted to just include the really important talking, you might cut out 75% of all that talking from the story of your day. If you were going to tell, if a person at the end of the day was like, "What happened today? Anything interesting?" And if you said, "Oh yeah, let me tell you about what Bob said to me," you would probably just cut to the most important or interesting conversation that you'd had that day. You would leave out most of the rest of the talking that you did, because while it might have been pleasant or it might have been fine at the time, it wouldn't really be important to the story that you're trying to tell. So when you're writing a story or a book, have your characters talk, but focus on the important information. All the talking that the characters do should either tell you more about who that character is, or it should drive the story forward. Through a conversation, the characters can set up what's going to happen next in the story. They can give each other vital information. You can use dialogue to create conflict too, which is where characters oppose each other. So for example, let's say you're writing a story about a detective who's investigating a crime. Let's say they go to the bank and they are going to ask questions from somebody that works there. You would want all the dialogue to drive the story forward. So you might leave out, the part where the detective, asks his assistant to go get him some coffee and a donut first. And then you'd leave out the part where he talks to somebody about which bank teller was the witness. You might want to start the scene and start the conversation where the detective is actually talking to the person who saw the crime. So the dialogue might be like, what was the criminal wearing, or what was the bank robber wearing? And the bank teller's like, "He was wearing a mask." The detective says, "Everybody was wearing a mask," because we're all wearing masks these days. So just try to have your dialogue tell us more about the characters or tell us more about the story. If you can, leave out anything that just seems like empty extra talking. Here is another picture that I took from Star Wars, just because a lot of us have seen it and it's a fun movie. This is a scene where Luke Skywalker is talking to Obi-Wan Kenobi right soon after they meet. So this guy here says, "Obi-Wan, now that's a name I've not heard in a long time. Luke says, "I think my uncle knows him. He said he was dead." Oh, he's not dead. Not yet. You know him? Well, of course I know him. He's me. So this is a great scene because Luke is meeting this guy for the first time, and he's finding out that Obi-Wan is the guy that he's been looking for. And it's kind of a fun way of setting up that Luke is looking for this one guy, Obi-Wan, and he doesn't realize that he's talking to Obi-Wan until Obi-Wan tells him. So the scene leaves out a lot of extra, they don't have a lot of random, they're not talking about the weather. Luke isn't like, sure is a lot of sand around here. They leave out kind of unnecessary stuff, and their dialogue focuses just on the most important information. So our next exercise is in the Q&A box. I want you to try to write a little bit of dialogue where, even though these are just made up examples, try to have, even within just a few sentences, the dialogue should either tell us more about who is talking, by what they say can give us a sense of who the person is. Like if they talk in a really, rude, angry way, that tells us, oh, that's a rude, angry character. Or if they talk in a very happy, joyful, silly way, that's telling us something about the character too. So your example can either tell us more about who's talking, or you can have the dialogue focus on driving a story forward. Like, tell me where the bad guy went. And the other person's like, I'll never talk, Okay, well, we've got conflict. We're adding to our story. So I'm going to look for some examples of that in the dialogue box. And of course, as always, if you guys have any other questions, you can put them in there too. All right, here is an example from Lorna. This example says, "Oh, please stay safe out there," Amelia said. "I will, dear sister," replied Jack. "You must be on the lookout every moment of the day and night, for you are headed into bandit territory," she warned. Oh, I like that. Just within a few sentences, we're finding out that there's some danger. We're finding out that these characters are brother and sister and that they like each other because he says, dear sister. That's good dialogue in just a few sentences. Well done. This is from Ethan. "I don't know what to say," said Tanaka. "Then don't say anything," Kobayashi said quickly. There was a long silence before Tonka said, "You killed my father," angrily. "No, that was you. Had you not gotten in my way, it would have been you that died," Kobayashi declared. "So now with him out of the way, I will kill you." He slowly raised his gun and Tanaka closed his eyes. That is awesome because you've got conflict there. You're telling us a lot about these characters in just a few sentences. There are no wasted words there. Everything they're saying is driving the story forward and putting action there. So great example. All right. More examples are showing up here. One person, it looks like they are copying and pasting something from a book they read. That's great. It looks like you're finding a good example, but I highly encourage you to, because it's a writing seminar, try to come up with your own examples. So, even if it takes you a minute to think of something, try, because it'll, you'll be building your writing muscles by coming up with an example. All right. All right, this is from Maya. "Please don't go." "I have to. I must save father." "Fine, but promise you will be safe." "I will." That's great, Maya. All right, this is from Amelia. "What the heck do you think you're doing?" said the guy named Bob. "I don't know. What are you doing?" said Joe. "People need to help each other. What am I supposed to say?" Good. Short little bit of dialogue, but really fun. That's awesome. All right. More examples are popping up here. All right. This is from Nathaniel. Tyler says, "Tell me where the money is." The woman says, "No, you tell me where your money is." That's a funny example. Good job. All right. Here's an example from Austin. John says gleefully, "When is your birthday?" David responds sternly, "I don't know. When is yours?" John responds confused, "I'm not sure either." That's good. That's setting up a little bit. It'd be kind of weird if a person didn't know when their own birthday was. So that's a great example of dialogue right there. It's telling us that something strange is happening in the story right from the beginning. All right. All right, here is an example from Isis. "Hi, friend," said Hugo. "Since when am I your friend?" said Angel. Since you decided that we would steal from a bank together." "That doesn't mean we're friends. That means we're partners in crime. Now leave me alone. I'm trying to put together a plan, and I don't need an annoying little boy standing over my shoulder yammering the entire time." "I won't. Plus, why would you ask me to help you if you thought I was annoying? Also, you think everyone is annoying. I chose you because you are the best choice I've got, and everyone is annoying." That's great dialogue, Isis. It's telling us about what those characters think and the way they act and kind of what their relationship is between each other in just a few sentences. So great job. All right, so Shanna says that her example takes place in the middle of World War II. "Don't go, my love," says Rose. "I have to, my dear. I have no choice. Besides, I will come back, Rose. Wait for me." Then he sings the song, "Darling, Won't You Wait?" That's great, Shanna. It's like you got like a historical drama, romance feeling going there. It's really nice. All right. Let's see. We probably have time on this one for a couple more examples here. All right, here's an example from Milo. Short and sweet. "It is me. Bob, the killer?" "Yes, the killer." Milo, your examples are always funny. Good job. Let's see. All right. Those were good examples, everybody. All right, let's go on to the next section of our dialogue here. Okay. Try giving each of your characters their own voice. How could each character talk in a unique way? So when we say voice, voice in writing doesn't just mean that you're talking that people can hear you. Voice is usually the way that you talk or how you sound that's different from everybody else. Each character in a story, if you want to make them stand out, they should sound different from all the other characters if you can. Here's one example that I thought of because I'm doing Star Wars examples. If you think of Yoda from Star Wars, he talks in very short sentences. He has a special grammar to the way he talks. Do or do not. There is no try. Yoda usually talks in short sentences that are kind of like he really doesn't spend like a lot of time talking. You know, let's say you just wrote down, if you took a whole page of a Star Wars script that Yoda is in, and you took away all the names, or you wrote like, let's say there was a new script coming out that Yoda was in and you took away all the names, most people that have seen a Star Wars movie would be able to tell which sentences were Yoda's without them even being labeled because of the way he talks. It's distinct from other characters. It's special in its own way. So it kind of tells you that it's Yoda right away, even if you know, hadn't seen that movie before. Now, this doesn't mean that, of course, every character will sound different, because there'll be, you know, if you like made a movie or a show out of what you've written, different people would be saying the lines. We're focusing on just the writing part. So if you write a story or a script or a book or whatever, you kind of want to make your writing, it's almost like you want each character to sound different in the reader's head. When every character sounds the same way, it can kind of just blend together, and it can kind of be boring for the reader, because in real life, people do talk in different ways. So one way you'll see this happen sometimes is the choice of words. Let's say a person is a cowboy and you're writing a Western story. If the cowboy rides up on his horse and he gets off and he goes into the general store and he says, "I would like 1 bag of flour, please. And I would also like a can of beans and 1 soda." You'd probably, as a reader, go, "Wait, what?" That cowboy just sounds like everybody else. So a pretty easy way to have the dialogue of a cowboy character, you might write the way that they talk to have a bit of the twang, you know, that bit of a country sound. So you might have, I've seen a lot of books where you spell the words differently based on who's talking. You might, for example, if the person has a really country way of talking, you might take off the last G in a word. So instead of riding, you write riding. You know, "I've been riding all day and I've been singing some songs." You know, you kind of clip off the ends of words, or you find a way to have all of that character's, you know, word choices show that they're like this really countrified cowboy out in the desert. You know, you won't be able to hear a pretend accent from the character, but based on the way you choose to write what the character says, it's almost like the reader will be able to hear that accent in their head. So maybe let's say the cowboy in your story is meeting a really dignified lady that comes from a big city. You might want to have all of her dialogue, everything that she says, be written very carefully, with full sentences, with no slang. You know, it should sound really nice. So she says, "I am looking for somebody to escort me, my wagon and I, to Dodge City, and I'm willing to pay top dollar." You know, doesn't really sound like a cowboy. That sounds like somebody who maybe has more proper English. And then you have your cowboy characters maybe use a lot of slang, maybe have them, you know, their sentence grammar would be maybe mixed up a little bit. That might be where you break our rule number 1 just a little bit and have them, you know, say and you know, a little bit. Whereas you would want your, you know, dignified city character to never say or to never make mistakes in what they say. A good lesson or a good trick that I learned a long time ago is when you've written something, you can go through and maybe delete all the character names and read it back to yourself. Can you easily tell who is saying what on the page just based on how it sounds? If you can tell who is saying what without there being any names on the page, it probably means that every character sounds differently based on what you've written. I'm reading a book right now in real life, and I'm not super enjoying this book very much, to tell you the truth. And one of the things is that most of the characters, they sound the same. The writer didn't really make each character kind of have their own voice. And it's one thing that I noticed pretty quickly, is that most of the characters talk pretty similarly. There's been several times where I'm reading down the page and I can lose track of who's saying what because the characters all sound the same. So I have to go back and I have to see, okay, where was the last place in the page that it said like John said? Okay, that's what John said, and the other guy said this and this and this and this. Because it's all just kind of blends together because all the characters sound the same. So when you write, try to give your characters their own voices and make them sound a little bit different from each other. So go ahead in the Q&A box. Your next exercise for the day is to try to write some dialogue where you mix it up. make the characters sound different from each other. And if you have fun with it, I'm about to read it out loud. So go ahead and give me something where maybe they sound different enough that I'll get to do a fun accent or something. No promises. All right, let's see what we have. Let's see here. Shanna has, yeah, probably based on the example that I gave. Shanna says, howdy, y'all. 1 bag of flour, a can of beans, and a new cowboy hat. Yep, that would be a good cowboy dialogue in a story. Austin says here, you ain't come from this town here, do ya? Yep. Yeah, it sounds like we're probably a lot of us are going to do cowboy examples now. That's great. That's a great example, Austin. Let's see. What else do we have here? All right. So Ethan's example. I will kill you if it's the last thing I do, said Kobayashi in an angry voice. No, it will be you that dies, declared Tanaka. He grabbed his gun and knocked Kobayashi to the ground. Kobayashi took out 2 guns and said, think again. Good. And it goes on. You actually wrote a lot here. So yeah, trying to find a way to, it looks like one of your characters speaks in like shorter sentences than the other. That's a good example there. Oh, one person says, am I going to publish it? No, that example I said before, that's a book that I'm reading right now. It's a book that I bought at the bookstore and I'm reading it. But yeah, when I started it, it's from an author that I actually really like, but I think in this book, their character dialogue all kind of sounds the same. So I'm not really sure what happened there. Okay. All right, here's an example from Nathaniel. The robber says, hello, how's your money? And then I say, my money is doing good. The robber says, give me your money. I say, why should I? The robber says, because I told you to. I say, oh, okay, here's 20 bucks. Good example, Nathaniel. Good job. I could just tell from the way you wrote it, your main character there, he sounds much more like, oh, okay, and chipper, where the robber sounds kind of like gruff and like, give me your money. So good job. All right. Here's an example from Amelia. This sounds like it might be more cowboy examples, but Amelia says, it's getting hot out here. I love the country. That's a good example. Very fun. Mackenzie has an example here. I'm going to guess that this character is probably supposed to have a Russian accent just from the way from the way Mackenzie wrote it. All right, I'm going to try my best here. But it looks like, hello, me name is Nadeline. I apologize in advance if my accents aren't very good, but that's what it looks like to me. All right, good. Elaine has an example here. It's very short, but it sounds like it's probably a robot character because it says, I am a robot. Very good. Yeah, if you have like a robot character, usually in books, if they're like a robot or like an android or some kind of like, alien character, they'll often, good writers will write that with a very different voice than just like your everyday human character. They might write in very short, specific sentences that all kind of sound like they have one, tone to them. That's how you can kind of tell it's a robot. You can make your robot sound different, but that'll immediately tell your reader, oh, this is a robot character, if you make them sound very mechanical and make all their, talking sound very similar. All right. Aubrey points out that in Star Wars, R2-D2 all of their dialogue is beeps and boops and stuff. And then C-3PO is like, we don't have time for that. Yeah, that's a good example because, yeah, you could immediately tell on the page, oh yeah, this is R2-D2 talking. This is C-3PO. And that's also a good example of where they made one of the characters still like a robot droid, talk kind of like a very dignified, like almost like English person that has very like almost flowery dialogue. Really made that character stand out from like your normal robot character that they always kind of sounded the same before. Here's an example from Maya. Hello, John. What ails you? I think I might be coughing. Achoo! Oh, how miserable you must feel. Actually, I kind of feel like a cowboy hat stuck inside of a bag of flour. Oh, that's great. Your two characters there, Maya, they sound completely different. I read it, and in my mind, one of them sounds like an English person, and the other sounds like a, you know, kind of an American country cowboy type person. And I can like hear their voices, even though I'm just reading words on a page. So you did a great job. Well done. This is from Isha. I sat next to the new girl in school. I asked her, what's up? She said, nothing fancy, in a British accent. Yeah, you can kind of help your reader along by telling them how the person sounds. If you go ahead and tell them like one time that the person's British or has a British accent, you could then write the rest of their dialogue, kind of, you know, reinforcing that. You should have the rest of what they say sound like a British accent based on your word choice. But it's totally okay to help them along, to kind of tell them what they sound like, and then let the reader fill it in for the rest of the story. Oh man, one person here has some dialogue in a Scottish accent. I'm not going to try that. I can't do a Scottish accent. I would just embarrass myself. All right, here, this is from Alan. It says, what do you need? I am your assistant, Taco Bot 3000. My job is to shoot tacos out of a taco blaster. That's really fun, Alan. Good job. What else do we have here? A few people are talking about characters that they like from stories and movies that have a very distinctive voice. Yeah. Oftentimes our favorite characters, they stand out because they are different. Not just how they literally sound, but because of the way that they talk can be, you know, really fun. It can be really different from everybody else. Even, you know, before the first Harry Potter movie ever came out, before we ever heard actors and actresses say all the lines, if you just read the first Harry Potter book, Harry sounds very different from Hermione. The children characters sound very different from Dumbledore. If you just read their lines, you could tell that Dumbledore's lines are not said by a child character. You can tell when Hermione or Ron are talking, even if you took away the names, because Hermione is very proper. She's very kind of uptight at first, and Ron is not. So, yeah, good examples you guys are putting in the Q&A box. All right, we have just a couple minutes left. Let's see what other examples we might have here. Isis asks, do you think Percy Jackson has a New York accent? Yeah, if I remember the stories, I think he either lives in Manhattan or he lives on Long Island, where they travel to Long Island, which is right next to New York City. So yeah, he probably should have a New York accent if that's where he's from. Which makes a good point. If you're going to write a story and your character is from a certain place, try to find out how the people there sound. Let's say you're going to write a story and your main character is from New York City. Well, maybe watch some YouTube videos of people from New York talking. Maybe try to find out what they say there that people don't say other places. For example, I live in Oregon, And if I want a sugary carbonated drink, I ask for a soda. But in other parts of the country, like the southern part of the United States, people usually say pop. You would ask for a pop, or sometimes you would just ask for a Coke, even if you mean like a lemon lime soda or some other flavor. There are parts of the country where people ask for a Coke, even if they don't want a Coca-Cola. So it's worth, spending a little bit of time finding out how people talk where you plan to write your story. Of course, if you're making up a story that takes place on another world or in space or with aliens or something else, you can make your characters sound however they want. But if you're going to write a story that takes place in Michigan or Texas or somewhere else, and you have a person just sound like people sound everywhere else, it might not ring true to your reader. That's probably the last, good point of dialogue that we want to talk about today, is just try to find ways to really make it authentic. Try to find things that people say in that area that they don't say anywhere else, or else you'll have some readers from that area just going like, that's not the way we talk. All right. So it looks like we're about out of time. You guys wrote really great examples in the Q&A box today. I'm going to read all the examples that you put in there, but you guys are such good writers and such fast writers. We just don't have time to read all of them out loud. So thank you for all watching and participating today. The time really flew for me. I hope you guys had, learned a few things today. As always, keep on practicing, keep on writing, and I hope I'll see you back later this week. I don't have a writing seminar tomorrow, but I think another teacher does. So there will be something else in this 2:30 slot. And then I'll be back on Wednesday with a poetry webinar. We're going to be talking about the poetry of Shel Silverstein. And then on Thursday, I have another creative writing webinar where we're going to talk about world building. And that is how you create the whole fictional world of a story or a book that you're writing. I think that's going to be a lot of fun. So I hope I'll see you guys all back on Wednesday and Thursday. See you next time.